Hello, YouTube. This is proud gay white male here, and I joined a bunch of Facebook groups that were based on that were debating Facebook groups, and um, I posted that I would like to find somebody to debate my quote that liberals are either um, evil, stupid, or a combination thereof, or both, basically. And it spurred quite a bit of conversation. And I found a taker. And this is Max. Hi, Max.
Hi.
Hi. Um, so I'd like to, I think maybe because we literally just met maybe 2 minutes ago, I
Sure.
should probably introduce myself to you a little bit and give you a little bit of a background. So I'm Canadian. I live in Brantford, Ontario, uh, and my YouTube channel has been only going for about 2 months now. I am uh, an anarchist, an atheist, um, very conservative in my sort of tradition. If you're political views, it's kind of strange thinking about political views when you're an anarchist, but nonetheless, we're not going to make the state go away tomorrow. So I think the existing, we have to work within the system. And yeah, I would consider myself very, I'm a gender realist. I'm a race realist. I just, in my opinion, what I've done is I've taken that red pill and I've swallowed it completely in all aspects of life. So, Max, you want to tell the group a little bit about you?
Oh yeah. My name is Max Mills. I run a Facebook debate group called the Debate Group Without an Interesting Name. I sometimes write political articles for AmericaBlog.com. I have a I don't know. I just think politics is cool, and I always have. And planning to get I'd like to run for office someday, but we'll see.
Oh, so you actually run the Facebook group that I
Oh yeah,
posted
that's
this
my
in?
group. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's kind of cool.
Yeah. It was.
Um, Go ahead.
Um, I don't know. I majored in computer science. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say, I guess, further than
Okay.
that. It's really relevant.
So, first of all, okay, so the debate topic is liberals are either stupid, evil, or a combination of both. Do you
Hmm.
agree or disagree?
I disagree.
Do you disagree with the entire statement?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, so would you consider yourself a liberal?
I would. I mean, I'm left of center. I'm not as liberal as some people in my group, but I could not imagine myself voting for a Republican, at least not a current one.
Right. Okay. So, what is the difference between liberal and conservative in your opinion? And I think just because we're in different countries,
Yeah,
we should. What is the difference between left wing politics and right wing politics in your opinion?
that's a good question. In America, as in most other countries, the words conservative and liberal have come to mean packages of things that aren't necessarily related or tied together by any overarching definition. And so when you said liberals, I assumed you meant a person who is, in general, more aligned with the liberal package of stuff in America than aligned with the conservative package of stuff. And things that I would consider to be part of the liberal package of stuff might be, pro gay marriage. You know what I mean? And, ooh, I'm getting a phone call, but I can't answer it right now. In any case, and people who are for, the conservative package might be, more pro gun or whatever. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So definitions are important, and I did put liberal there. Um,
Yes.
uh, because it has a broader meaning. But technically, I didn't mean liberal. I meant left wing politics versus right wing politics. Now, what I mean, and I take the definition, the Wikipedia definition very seriously. So,
Okay.
um, to summarize the difference between the left and the right, it's social equality. It's that one term, social equality. So if you are pro social equality, you would be more inclined to vote for a left wing politician or party, or depending on your country and how that, you know. Whereas if you're conservative, well, it's your interpretation of the entire concept of social equality. So the more left you are, the more you want everyone to be equal. Whereas the more right you are, um, okay, so on the left, there's only one concept, is that everybody should be treated equally. The further authoritarian you get in on the left, the more sort of, you know, there would be stages, socialism and then communism and things like that. Whereas on the right, the term social equality, there's a conversation about it. So it's either natural, social inequality is either a natural state of being. So it just comes across because you and I are not equal. Um, or the really far right, they would say that it should be enforced. So I'm not of the it should be enforced, but I do think social inequality is completely natural. Trying to fight against that is would make you either evil, stupid, or a combination of both.
Why?
Because social equality does not exist. It's a myth. The entire premise of left-wing politics is based on social equality. When you base something on something that makes no sense, um, and it doesn't exist, it's a complete myth, um, then everything that comes from that will be either stupid, evil, or a combination of both. So,
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
so just so we're clear here, your argument is basically that liberalism revolves around social equality. It's impossible for us to be totally socially equal. So someone trying to or claiming to try to achieve social equality must either be stupid enough to believe it's real or evil enough to be using it for something else. Right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So do you believe that it is possible that we will cure all cancer within the next 5 years?
Do I think
All
it's
of it, just
possible?
in
Do I,
Africa and the Middle East, all. Hello?
do I think it's possible?
Yeah. Do you think it's possible?
I think if somebody were to come up with the cure of cancer tomorrow, and they made it affordable for the world,
Yeah.
it could spread within the next 5 years.
Do you think?
I think it's possible.
Okay. What about within the next week?
No, because
Okay.
I don't think we would even have
So
distribution
it is
channels that we could.
impossible for us to cure all cancer. Do you think it is stupid or evil for us to try and cure some cancer?
No.
Okay, so here's kind of the point that I'm going at with that. It is impossible for us to have true social equality, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive for greater social equality. And it doesn't mean social inequality is a good thing.
Um, so you're saying that we should treat people nice.
No.
So you think that you and I should have the same health care?
I think that neither you nor I should die of a preventable illness if possible. I think
So
that
you
we should,
think that there should be a minimum wage, minimum standards of healthcare, and things like that?
I think so.
Okay. So why?
Um, I think that in general, it is. I'm sorry. Let me just make sure that I am articulating my thoughts correctly. Let's stick with the minimum wage because my thoughts on that are a little less complicated, and it sounds like it doesn't matter which one I go with for your argument. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. I think it's good for a minimum wage to exist because I think that it's bad for us to have a society in which a person can't feed their children. I think it's bad if kids are dying because people who are working full time aren't getting paid enough to support them. To me, that's a problem. And while I can't save all children, and while some degree of social inequality will always be a fact, I think it is a better world because we try to make it better. And I think that shrugging our shoulders and saying it won't ever be perfect, I just think it's a loser's attitude.
So why not? Okay, what do you think the minimum? By the way, do you live in America?
I do. I'm in Texas.
Okay, I'm in
I,
Canada, in Ontario.
I,
Um, what do you think the minimum wage should be?
I don't know. I'll leave that to the experts, the economists, the people who figure that sort of thing
Well,
out.
$15 has been floating around for quite a while, right?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I've heard that number.
Have you ever looked into any of the reasons why enforcing minimum wage is terrible for the economy?
I used to be an ardent conservative and a paid political journalist for conservatism. So the answer is yes.
So you know all of the arguments against the minimum wage. By the way, I'm a voluntarist, so I don't believe in the state at all. I don't believe in enforcing any type of regulation on anyone.
Why?
But because I think that we would be, that's not kind of where I'm going.
Okay.
Although I would rather live in an anarchist, voluntarist society, I understand that we live here and now today, and we should try to make the best of it.
I'd like
So
to talk about that at some point in the future, but not necessarily this time if that's not what you want to talk about.
well, the sort of the topic of the debate is liberal is either evil or stupid.
That's right. Wouldn't want to deviate from, it would be immature.
Well, we could no, we could
Yeah. No, no,
have
absolutely.
a separate debate about statism versus non-statism.
Okay, let's do
Um,
that. Not right now.
right. Yeah.
Obvi- Okay.
Um, okay. So um, you know about all of the arguments against enforcing a minimum wage, but you still want one.
Um, yeah. I think that a lot of the arguments that I used were flawed, and I think that the ones that were right, we unfortunately live in a world where sometimes for good things you have to, sometimes there are no perfect solutions to problems. So you just got to do the best. And I think it's really easy to poke holes in things like the minimum wage when you don't have another solution. But I know at the end of the day that I would not feel comfortable allowing children to starve to death because their parents can't afford enough no matter how much they work. I think that's it's just not okay with me. It's not something I accept. And I will do what I can to keep that from happening, even if that means, some drawbacks.
Okay, so we cannot talk about all of the reasons, but
Okay.
one obviously one argument against minimum wage is that it creates more unemployment.
Okay.
So although one person is now making more money, there's another person laid off.
Okay. Here's why that's wrong. If I'm sorry to be so blunt. Um, Say you're the CEO of McDonald's and you have $1 million extra dollars and you have all the workers that you need. You have the bare minimum. They're getting the job done. They're getting the job done well. Do you A, double your work staff, or B, pocket that million for a rainy day?
You do whatever you want to do. It's your business.
That's right. What you aren't going to do is hire unnecessary employees. The reason why these people, so individually, the market value of a worker at KFC is very low because they're easy to replace should they happen to, not whatever. However, a certain number of staff members is important. Businesses don't hire, they don't spend a bunch of money hiring people they don't need. If they had to pay a little more money, it wouldn't necessarily reduce, it would not necessarily, it's an important word, reduce unemployment because they would still need a KFC that needs 10 employees will still need 10 employees. And if they only need 10 employees, they're not going to have 12, no matter how much extra money they have, and no matter how little they can pay these employees. And if they do need 10 employees, they're going to have to hire that many, no matter how much they cost, because they need it to maintain the store.
Okay,
And
I completely disagree.
okay, well,
You can overwork people.
okay.
You can
Oh, don't worry. I support work week legislation and stuff to keep people from being overworked. See
no,
how
no,
we
no, 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 no. I'm not talking about that. Okay, we're just talking about minimum wage, and
okay.
because like there's many arguments. Okay, so what do I do is I replace the cashiers with robots,
Okay.
touch screens,
Why didn't you do that already? Why didn't so minimum wage?
because I wanted a more personal business,
Okay,
a
so why don't you
style.
want that?
Huh? Why do
So
I no longer want it? Because I can't afford it.
okay, so the issue is okay. A, I don't mind the jobs being replaced with robots. I think that more jobs would be created. I think that people probably
Not low skill jobs. And that's what we're talking about, minimum wage here.
while I think that that's a possibility, I also think in general, as sorry, let me collect my thoughts into one thing. I agree that there are some low skilled jobs that could be replaced with robots, but I also agree that there are things that people bring to the table that a robot might necessarily not bring to the table. And I also agree that there is a value to those things. And I think for that reason, the minimum wage should not be too high. However, I would point out to you, I went to Sonic the other day and someone brought me out my food, and there is a minimum wage. So clearly, while 15 may or may not be too much, clearly a minimum wage does not intrinsically lead to these kinds of problems. Also, um, yeah, I just
There's so many
those
arguments.
kinds of problems, and I also think that you are overestimating how easy it is to create and roll out new technology. And I also think that the economy has historically always adapted to technological advancements replacing human jobs, and I see no reason to believe that that would stop.
Um, okay, it's a restaurant. People want
Yeah.
to typically want to be served by people.
Yes.
There's an added value to that, but when that gets too expensive, you weigh the pros and
True.
cons, and you
So,
replace
so
people with robots, and now you got a high skill person maintaining those and programming them
and
and
that's
things
why
like that.
no one would ever make the minimum wage $60 an hour. But so there's a point. Clearly, there's a point between where we're at now and $60 an hour at which what you're saying is true. So how about instead of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, we get all of our economists together and we say, hey, so we don't want all of our unskilled labor jobs replaced with robots, but we also don't want the children of our unskilled laborers starving to death in the streets. Like, is there a way that we can,
Okay, I'm
those
not. Why?
why? What do you mean? Why?
Why don't we want? Okay, let's get a
Are you
little bit
asking why I
heated.
don't want children starving in the streets?
Yeah, why don't we want that?
That question leads me to believe, and I hope you'll forgive me for saying this because you did say it about me, that you're either stupid or evil.
Okay.
Um, the reason why we don't
So,
want
well,
because
no, I get your argument for this. I understand it. It's an unpleasant thing,
it's no, I'm sorry. It's not that it's unpleasant. It's that it's wrong.
in your opinion.
I'm sorry.
I don't think it's wrong.
You use words like evil. I use words like wrong.
Hmm.
What is ethics to you?
Okay, no. Let's stay
No.
with the kid dying in the street
Yeah.
because mom made bad decisions and she could not support her children.
What do you mean bad decisions?
Well, she had sex with somebody who was unreliable. She's unreliable herself. So there's let's do away with the welfare state and instead of giving financial incentives to people uh, to people to act irresponsibly,
Yeah.
we should not provide financial incentives for degenerate behavior.
Okay, two things. One, do you honestly, this is legitimate open question. Do you
Hmm.
honestly genuinely believe that every American currently on the minimum wage is there because of degenerate behavior? And again, we're still using words like wrong, evil, degenerate while you refuse to explain what you think morality is and why you don't think it includes not letting children die, which I think is kind of a big hole since one of the most impactful words in your initial statement around which this entire debate revolves is an ethical word.
Hmm.
Uh, and if we can't agree on what evil means,
Okay, free market. I'm 100% for the free market.
okay,
Anything that detracts from capitalism in any way, shape, or form, I believe is evil
Why?
and are stupid.
Why?
Because capitalism creates the very best of everything.
So because it's old.
No,
Okay.
monarchy is older.
I think
State-run
it predates.
communism, socialism.
I must have misheard you. I thought you said because it predates. You must have said a different word than predates.
Yeah, well, no, just because it creates the best societies. We have
Okay. What makes
a
you say it
ton of
creates the best
evidence.
societies?
Sorry?
What makes you say it creates the best societies?
United States became a superpower of the world in only a few hundred years.
We must be, we must have different history books. The United States became a superpower after, in the 20th century. The 20th century. At the beginning of the 20th century, Teddy Roosevelt helped back the labor unions, and that was kind of the beginning of workers' rights in this country. And then, after that, there was an economic collapse, which we crawled out of on the back of a president who instituted a lot of these social programs you're complaining about. Then, when we were, kind of desperate for certain kinds of things, we drafted all males in the country and they gave them all free access to higher education. And because of that, we emerged as a superpower. And I think that saying, oh, well, capitalism gave us this, if you're using capitalism in a purest sense, where you're excluding all these other social aspects and all these other regulations and saying that's what made America a superpower, that's just wrong. It's just not a true statement.
Okay, I'll give you one example. There
Okay.
was zero welfare state,
Yeah.
zero in the United States before World War II.
Okay.
Okay, and the implementation of the welfare state has is it correlates to poverty in the United States at 0.9. There is a
Okay.
correlation of 0.9. One is perfect correlation. So the welfare state equals poverty. You would think that it would do the opposite.
Sorry.
So when you
What
do
do
something,
you mean? What do you mean correlates? Do you mean poor people
that's
or
a math. That's a
people?
math. It's a mathematical term. A negative one is zero correlation. A positive number one equals
How
a
does this
perfect
measure?
correlation,
Like,
and
what do
it's
you mean?
0.9. There is a
Okay.
correlation between welfare and poverty in the United States, and that correlation is 0.9. So that
Why
is a
would
near
you
perfect
expect?
correlation.
So there's a correlation. You're saying that poor people tend to use the welfare state.
No, I'm saying the growth of poverty is in direct correlation to the introduction of the welfare state and the growth of the welfare state.
I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story that I read in a book. I don't know if it's true or not. It is about a mayor who looked over some documents in front of him and discovered that previous mayors, you know, there was a correlation that as crime became more plentiful, they hired more police. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so he looked at this data and he said, oh my gosh, I know what the problem is. And he cut the police force. And then crime ran rampant in the city.
Mm-hmm.
The moral here is that correlation does not imply causation. You say
Mm-hmm.
that there is a correlation between a growth in the welfare state and a growth in poverty. And I'm not sure why I should believe that that means the welfare state is causing poverty, because intuitively and historically, it seems to me that it has been the opposite. Poor people cry out for relief, and we help them.
Okay. Um, are you going to tell me that capitalism has not created the best countries on earth?
I am going to tell you that the best countries on earth have emerged largely from a mixed economy that did involve regulations and also involved capitalism. I'm not a socialist. I think that capitalism provides a strong basis, but I also think if left, I think totally unchecked capitalism, the only modern examples you see of that are all cesspools.
What modern example?
Oh man.
What do you think is the best capitalist society?
Well, if we're
Or
talking about a society, I just can't think of a truly capitalist society in the Western world at all. When I said that, I was assuming that there were some anarchist nations somewhere in the third world that didn't have any kind of economic regulations.
okay,
Can
you
you?
can't count Somalia. You
So
can't
I'm,
count. You can't count Somalia. I could disprove that too.
well, I didn't say Somalia,
Well, that's the
but
only true anarchist society on earth right now.
I feel like we got to you making claims and then you trying to demonstrate them. And then when I explained why, for example, early America was not as you claim and all these different things, and now it feels like suddenly it's on me to go around trying to, sift through all the different nations and their economic systems to kind of prove you wrong. But this,
Okay, I'm gonna tell you right. I'm gonna tell you, and this is just a fact,
yeah,
that although there is no pure capitalist society on earth, the best standard of living of all of them are based in capitalism. The only reason we stray from capitalism is this. The only reason we stray from capitalism is one reason and one reason only. It
okay,
creates so much wealth, and there's a lot of greed, and the state, which is the government, wants a piece of that, and they want to start to control it and move that wealth in certain directions. So that's when the state gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they start to impose restrictions. For example, this is one good example. For example, let's just say that you're a computer guy, right?
yep,
Okay, so let's just say you are an individual entrepreneur and you create software from your home.
okay,
I do the same thing, and we both are competitors. Okay, but
okay.
I have 100 employees and you only have one.
Hey, whoa, how come I get to be the little guy in your club?
Okay, you can have 100 employees and I've only got one.
I think that's a lot.
Okay, so what you do is you give $1 million to a politician and that politician says, okay, now both of our software has to go through a regulatory body.
Hmm.
So that means you have to hire an employee and I have to hire an employee.
Yeah.
So guess what? I'm out of business because
Okay.
there's one employee for you is not going to mean much, but I mean one rule
Yeah.
makes us. So this is why anytime you infringe on a free market, you are doing a bad thing. So
Whoa,
let me.
whoa. Okay, so you had one example in which, in a vacuum, an
Mhm.
imaginary government born out of, whatever is going on in your mind, did something that proved your point, and because of that, all government interventions are bad. Like, what a leap, right? Like,
Okay.
no, your thought experiment, which you find tailored to agree with what you're saying, does not prove that all intervention into the market is wrong.
Mhm.
That's what
Okay. So that was one small example. Now I will get to a greater example. So Sweden is an excellent example. Sweden or Switzerland, one of those states.
yeah,
Um, they get wealthy, and then they start to bring in a lot of socialism. And then they go, oops, this is screwing up our economy. This is screwing up society. And they have to revert back. So,
yeah.
with all of this money that comes in, they always try to bring in all of these socialism,
Mhm.
big government, and all of these types of things. And it always has a negative effect on society. And the only way to turn that around is to let the free market do its thing.
Yeah.
So, where we got on this conversation, and that's a fact. This will be one of those facts that I'll be able to put up on the screen. But
Okay.
where we got into this is kids dying in the street. I
Yes.
want them to die in the street
Okay.
because that would create. For example, let's just, and I'll use this as an example because it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
The migrant crisis in Europe. I
Okay.
think that 10 feet inside of a border, I want a wall with a guy and a gun on the top. And there's a line, this is 10 feet in from the border, and they're painted on the ground is just a yellow line or something. And in big, in every single language necessary, it says, step over that line and you will die.
Yeah.
That's it. Migrant crisis over. The first person to step over the line gets his head blown off, and then it disincentivizes anybody else from going. The same
Okay.
thing with the starving kid. If mom wants to push out baby after baby after baby and rob dad
So we're clear. I'm sorry, I don't remember what
Mhm.
your answer to this question was. You do actually think every single minimum wage mother is a degenerate?
No, I didn't say
Okay.
that.
Why are you focusing on the degenerates? Because I'm not. I'm focusing on the hardworking men and women who have had bad things happen to them and just ended up in a bad place right now. And I'm what happened to you?
Most of what liberals are doing is just equality is focusing on the poorest, the downtrodden, the disenfranchised. That
You know,
is where the social equality part
yeah,
comes in. Nobody's asking. Well, they're asking Donald Trump or Bill Gates to pay more in taxes,
yeah,
which I don't think that they should.
yeah.
I believe in a flat tax if we live in a statist society. But no, I don't think I'm not on board with any of it. I
Okay, I'm
think I
sorry. I'm still confused because a minute ago you were trying to make your point with your imaginary degenerate, but you agree that they're not all degenerates. So my question is again, would is there a reason you want the tiny ailing daughter of a hard-working person who did everything right but just ended up in a bad situation to die in the streets? And how does that help us? And yeah,
um, well, there's many variables here.
yeah,
So first of all, I don't want to be forced. Now this is a voluntarist organization. I don't want to be forced to have to help her.
okay.
So in other words, I don't believe in taxes at all. But
Hey, I,
even in the statist um, uh, paradigm. So in other words, we do have a government. It's either conservative or liberal. Um, when you provide incentives for people to do degenerate behavior, they will
yeah.
do more of it.
Do you believe that a person who is needs welfare to feed their children is better off than a person who does not have children and gets a degree and do you believe I would be better off if I impregnated a bunch of women and was working at KFC? Do you think I'd be better off?
As
If the answer
compared
is no, then it's not a financial incentive.
when you provide a
Yeah.
financial incentive for degenerate behavior, you
Yeah.
get more of it.
Okay. So if you aren't getting more money to do X than you get to do Y, then you aren't being incentivized to do X.
So
A person,
you're saying somebody on welfare actually makes more than somebody who makes minimum wage. I
um,
completely agree with that. You guys are completely fucked with all of the actually. There's the welfare chart, and Stefan Molyneux actually talks about the welfare state in the United States, and there's many cliffs. There's many cliffs that somebody who is on social assistance, they don't want to go over a certain amount.
yep.
So I don't want to make too much money because then I get cut off of all of these
Oh, I'm
benefits.
sorry. I'm still, for the record, a person who earlier in this debate said the best economy has capitalism as a foundation. So when you use all these absurd, hyper socialist, huge welfare state examples, you're not really arguing against my position, which is for a mixed economy.
Okay, but
Also,
I would say
yeah,
that the very fact that you want even one person on if you believe in social equality in any
yeah.
way, shape, or form, then you are either evil or stupid.
I don't think repeating your assertion counts as proving it.
No, no, no. Okay, but I want you to say, I want you to, I guess, maybe prove to me that helping that one poor person out is a good idea.
Um, Here is our primary issue.
Okay.
Your ethical standard, what you consider to be right or wrong, revolves around how strictly something adheres to your idea of a voluntarist capitalistic society. By that absurd definition of ethics, I most certainly am evil and proudly so. My understanding of ethics is, obviously one which I've thought through a little bit more than you, hence, because thinking. Um, and in my ethical system, children Dying is bad. And while I agree with you, I actually 100% agree with you, by the way, that it is better for a person in a vacuum to be able to keep the fruit of their labors. Your right to your money, your right to all of your money, is not more important than another person's right to not have to watch their child starve in the street. And I just think, and not more important than the child, who, by the way, has never done anything wrong, his right to not die in the street. And I think we live in a world where we have to make choices. And if my choices are take someone else's money or allow a child who did no wrong to starve in the streets because of things his or her parents might or might not have done wrong, it's an easy choice.
Mm-hmm.
And people who oppose that are people who I wish I could tax doubly because they're evil. And that way we can lower taxes on the kind of people who don't like children starving in the streets.
Okay, there's people starving all over the place every
Yes,
single day.
yes,
So why don't you care about all the ones
I
that
do.
starve in Africa?
I do a lot.
Really? Do you have proof? Anything that you've done in the last 365 days to give them money, to support them in any way, shape, or form? A starving person in Africa. What have you done?
That's a really good question. Give me a moment to think. Um, I mean, I have a lot of family over there right now helping them get water, but that's not me, so I can't really count it. I give a lot to charities in small amounts, but to a lot of different ones, so I can't tell you exactly which ones. However,
So you did that voluntarily.
yeah, all the time.
Okay, but do you live in a house?
An apartment.
Okay. Is it comfortable?
Well, I just moved in, so really, you're watching me sit in what is one of my only pieces of furniture. But
Okay.
it will be comfortable, I think.
Do you think that you should maybe siphon off maybe 20% of your income and give more of it to poor people?
I think that it would be good for me to do more than I have. Unfortunately, I am not a perfect person. And the discussion here is not about my ethical conduct, but whether or not my ideology is necessarily and intrinsically unethical. I might be a hypocrite, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Okay. So what I'm saying is
Yeah.
people are dying all over the place.
Yes.
People, there's an incredible amount of evil everywhere. Terrible things happen. If
Mhm.
people choose voluntarily to help other people out, I don't care what people do with their
Yeah.
time and their resources. You
Yeah.
can spend 100% of your time in charity, which, by the way, I also think that charity is BS and it doesn't work.
Of course.
Um,
Well, you're evil. So,
well, okay, you tell me of all of the millions and millions of dollars that we keep sending, billions,
yeah.
probably even trillion, or
Yeah.
that we spend in Africa, and all of the extra resources and blah 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 blah. Why haven't they figured it out yet?
I'm sorry, what do you mean? Who figured out what?
A lot of Africans actually have cell phones.
Okay.
A lot of those cell phones connect to the internet,
Okay.
even in the poorest of villages. So all you got to do is look up and go, well, somebody, all they have to do is go look up the internet and say, hey, United States is doing pretty well, so why don't we just copy what they're doing? It's not like
That's
they have
a
to
question.
invent a
What
new,
they
they
do?
don't have to invent anything.
They should.
When you give out handouts and handouts and handouts and handouts, it doesn't help.
No. You're so right. The Africans should just do what the West has done. They should go to Africa, take a. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. Hold on. I figured out why they can't do that. Because the reason they're in this situation is because of a variety of historical and cultural influences, many of which we were a part of. They literally can't do what we did.
Why? Because they're not smart enough?
No, because there's no Africa for them to pillage.
Oh, by the way, um, is that what you think that we're doing over there? Is that what your family
I
is
think
doing
it's
over there?
certainly what we did. I think we went over there and we kind of destabilized. I mean, it wasn't like super stable to begin with, but I think we went over there, we drew a bunch of lines, we caused a bunch of problems, and I definitely think that there are.
What is the average IQ of somebody native to Africa?
I don't know
70.
or care.
And
Okay.
and do you know that in Western culture, if you were 60, you would be considered a complete imbecile, not able to even tie your own shoes?
I'm unfortunately not educated enough about this subject to correct what appears to be a defense of genuine racism. However,
What, you don't think that there's a difference in IQ between native Africans and people from the West?
I think that there is, I believe that IQ differences can be influenced by nurture, and I think that
No,
the
that's been disproven.
has it been disproven?
Yes.
Well, I don't know, man. I'm a computer science guy. If that's true, throw it up on your screen later. It doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. What does matter is that no matter how high or how low their IQ is, their children don't deserve to die. And I think that we should do what we can, and that's important to ensure that doesn't happen.
Well,
Here's
actually, we can't do anything because we
six
can't
years,
afford it. It's called we're living in debt.
for six
This
years in a variety of different contexts, I've worked with children. Some of those children were being abused. And because of the government, I was able to help get them out of those situations and put on track for a better life. Do you think it would have been better if they had been left to be abused by their family?
Okay. No. I'm
No.
glad that you did what you did. You did it
Okay.
voluntarily. You want to
But
talk
yes,
about
then I think of the CPS. If there had been no CPS, there would not have been very much I could do.
Okay, and I went to hospitals,
Okay.
hospices actually, that were dying, and I would spend the last few hours, if they were alone, I would spend their last, you know,
I'm
bit of
not trying to
time
have
together.
ethical competition with you.
No,
I'm
no,
asking
no.
you whether you
It's
think
voluntary.
it's good that CPS existed to take care of those children.
What I'm saying is that when you've got people with their hand out, you train
Child
them.
Protective Services is a government institution. Do you think it's good that they existed to help save those children when I was able to identify and pass them on?
No.
Okay, so you think it would have been better if these children had been left with their abusive families?
Um, I do believe in the non-aggression principle.
Okay,
And I do think that if you abuse children, you need to suffer repercussions.
okay. Who administers these repercussions in your
Which
idea?
by the way, it's a private police service. Which by the
Okay.
way, I'm actually on the fence on whether or not children should be considered property or human beings.
I think that is unsurprising given other things I've learned about your ethical nature. However, who pays the private police for?
Um, if you want protection, then you pay for them. Maybe they
Okay.
do community service on the side as well. Maybe they don't.
So I find a child who's being abused. The parents are paying for police service. I'm paying for a police service. Whose police service protects the child?
None.
Okay, so
That's why that's
again,
good. That's
back to square one here. Your belief is that it would be better for the child to remain with their abusive families than for the government to help them. And you don't think in your voluntariist society that anyone would help them or be able to help them.
no. I completely disagree. I
Okay.
think that there'd
So
be
who
a lot of people like you and me who
Okay.
choose a cause and would work for it, create
So
organizations
what does that
and
mean?
charities,
I
and
show up, I take the kid. These people tell the private police force that they're paying, their child has been kidnapped. I get shot. Childs go back to their abusive household. How much?
no. Okay, so for example, in a voluntary
Hey, for the
society,
record, we're
right?
at almost 49 minutes. At an hour, I'll probably have to go. Just
Okay.
letting you know in advance.
Okay, so in a voluntary society, you would
Yeah.
start up an organization called Child Protective Services
Mhm.
of of
How do they make
Texas.
money?
Um,
Do the children pay? Or do the
you,
abusive parents
maybe
pay?
you have bake sales.
Okay.
You raise your money on however you want, and there will be
So,
other kind people. There would be other kind people just like you that would
Okay.
be willing to financially support you. Maybe
Okay.
it's a large corporation that wants the marketing gimmick and they fund you entirely. They give you
Okay.
$10 million a year.
Why don't, instead of funding me, why don't they fund the media to tell them that they funded me?
Well, they would do both.
Why? Why pay me at all? If the media says they paid me, why do they need to pay me? How does it help them marketing wise?
Can we get back to the okay, so how corporations do charity now is they give $5 million to charity and then they spend $50 million telling people about it.
Okay, so why don't they just, in a voluntary society where they can do this, why don't they just keep that 1 million and just pay the 50 million?
Because they want to brag because it's about green. They want to
Who
make
makes
money.
them accountable when their brags are lies?
Yelp.
Okay,
So
so
it's a voluntary way of rating. So you would go out and you would say, I didn't get
so
that
I
money from
type on
them.
Yelp and I say I didn't get any money,
Yep.
and then
And then that becomes a news story.
200 employees get on Yelp and type, I received money. And then all the media that everyone is seeing says that I received the money. What now?
You're saying that all of the media is bought by that
Saying
corporation?
that, what stops all of the media from being bought?
Other media.
Okay, so what happens when all the media is bought or unified under a single umbrella? How do you stop
That can
monopoly?
only be done in a state of society.
Okay, what? Wait, I'm sorry. Monopolies can only exist in a state of society?
Correct.
Why?
Because there's always going to be competition. The
Why?
exact same what I said to you about a single regulatory thing.
Yeah.
This is the
So
kind
say
of
I'm
things that happens.
AT&T. I'm AT&T, you're Sprint. Okay, AT&T is bigger than Sprint, as you probably know. And all the other phone companies are gone. Let's just ignore them for a minute. All right, I'm AT&T, you're Sprint. I want all the market. So I hire my own personal military and I kill all of you. What happens? Next guy comes up, tries to start a phone company. My private military murders him and everyone who he knows. What now? Now I'm monopoly. All it
You
took was
you
bullet.
think in a free society we're just going to all sit back and let shit like that happen?
I think in a free society, or I mean a free society, per your definition. My question is, how do we know it's happening, and how do we stand up against it without getting shot? I say, how do we know it's happening? Because maybe they have all the media either killed or bought.
Then
The
there's always going to be other media.
thing is, I turn on my TV or I get on the internet. How do I know the difference between lies and truth?
You have to figure it out. So all we need is a
So let's
canceled
go ahead
check.
and back up a little. So
All we
I
need is a canceled check there. So
okay.
one investigative journalist is going to be able to figure that out.
Oh no, no, he won't, because he'll be killed by my personal military.
So he's going to kill everyone on Earth because we
Okay.
have the internet.
No. But he will kill investigative journalists who report falsely, and I will kill,
And are they going to kill you too? So you don't think that this is going to get around, and maybe we shouldn't do business with AT&T anymore?
maybe it will get around, and maybe no one will do business at all.
Then how do you survive?
Huh? Well, people will buy my phones. I'll be the only one on the block. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you suggesting that people would stop buying phones altogether?
Somebody is going to compete with
No, they won't, because I'll
AT&T.
kill them.
No, they won't. You really think that that is going to be good for AT&T's bottom line?
I think that if there are no competitors, anything is good for AT&T's bottom line.
Do you think that AT&T could afford as much military as the rest of the United States combined? Combined.
I think that if they were the ones who struck first, they could do enough damage that it would be really hard for anyone else to organize after that. I think that
I'm talking about the rest. We're talking about
okay, so
AT&T
let's
with...
go ahead and say that. Let's go ahead and say I'm AT&T. You're all of America. I've just killed all of Sprint. I'm now the only guy on the block. All right.
Mhm.
You, individual American, say, what are we doing about this? It's time for us to raise our own military. All right. So what you do you gather somewhere? Like where do you give supplies? Where do you have your strategies? I'm asking because I'm immediately going to bomb all those places.
Microsoft is going to
I'll bomb.
Microsoft and Apple and
Okay,
Google and
let's
all
go.
of their
Let's
militaries are just
that's
going
true.
to
Let's go ahead
annihilate
and assume that Google
AT&T.
wasn't in on it. Let's go ahead and assume that all these things are true. All right, and let's assume that that there are enough corporations to save the day. All right, let's go ahead and assume that. Now there is open warfare between phone companies
Hmm.
across
And
America.
that's why AT&T wouldn't do it in the first place.
I think history has demonstrated that humans are not always particularly wise or accurate in their predictions when it comes to deciding whether or not they should go to war.
I completely agree, but that's all statism.
I think that
Because
I
you,
guess I'm also a little confused. If a corporation becomes powerful enough, like at what point does it become a government? Like, you're right. It is all statism by definition because as soon as someone rouses a military underneath them and starts making rules, they're a government.
no,
So, I think that's kind of a tricksy thing to do. By the way, I have to leave in just over 4 minutes. I'm just letting you
okay.
know. Okay.
So, we strayed really off topic.
We did.
Unfortunately, we went to anarchy versus the state.
Yes.
But in my
You weren't going to go to, so I guess I'm sorry for that. But
um, so social equality does not exist. It doesn't mean that we have to treat every on the right. We know, understand, and accept that social inequality exists, and it doesn't mean that we have to be cold-hearted bastards. We could be
oh,
like you and I. We could be like you and I, where we volunteer our time and energy and try to help out the less fortunate of
you
our
don't think it's
societies.
cold-hearted to refer to the less fortunate as degenerate and say you want their kids to die in the streets because that's what you said. But this is the conclusion of Tory remarks, so I don't want to launch into it again. You have your conclusion of Tory remarks. So,
Um, when you try to force social equality on people, then it doesn't help the poor, and I can there's many examples of how it does not help the poor, um, and it actually hurts the poor. One of the biggest uh, contributors to poverty in the United States has been the introduction of the welfare state. We can't afford it. This is going to collapse sooner or later. Um, Men are not equal to women. Um, you are not equal to me. Blacks are not equal to whites. Christianity is not equal to Islam. The United States is not equal to Germany. Um, the Earth is not equal to the moon. The even concept that we try to strive for social equality is an absurd, insane starting point that fuels the left, and it does nothing but prove wrong time and time and time again. The only thing that actually makes prosperous, healthy societies is conservative values and um, understanding that we are different. Now let's work with those differences. So that's my conclusion.
okay.
Um, what would you like your conclusion to be?
Oh, I think that my comments have mostly spoken for themselves. Thank
Okay.
you for having me on, and
Okay.
do this again.